I'm here today to share my story. I'm 39 to be exact. And, well, I've been struggling with performance issues since I was 18. Or, to put it more simply, I face physical challenges in the bedroom, something many men deal with, but nobody talks about. It all started back in my childhood. I had twin brothers who grew up during those wild, reckless years, and they were always chasing excitement. Being identical twins, they'd pull a classic trick. One would be with a girl, and the other would swoop in the next day, pretending to be him. It was their secret game. They basically doubled their success with half the effort. Their reputation for being wild grew exponentially. They'd disappear for days on end, leaving together and coming back separately. Since my dad was a long-haul trucker and was basically never home, it was mostly my mom raising us and trying to keep it all together. Naturally, she was completely frantic every time my brothers vanished. This was back before everyone had a cell phone in their pocket. So it's not like she could just shoot them a text. She had to spend the whole night calling around to friends, neighbors, and anyone they knew. Sometimes she was even on the verge of calling the authorities just to find out where they were. At that point, I really started resenting my brothers. To me, they seemed reckless and like they didn't care about our parents at all. I remember it so clearly. One day, I was just 30 minutes late getting home from school because I took a detour. The moment I walked in, my mom was so stressed. She just snapped. Not you too. Please, just don't grow up to be like them. That thought really stuck with me. The idea that I shouldn't be out there, living that reckless lifestyle. It took root in my mind. And honestly, it found the perfect environment to grow because we were a pretty religious family. I had this prayer book, like a guide for confession, that listed out all these wrongdoings. It talked about moral purity. And it wasn't just about cheating. It was framed as any kind of closeness outside of a very specific path. It covered everything. Private habits, temptations, you name it. They hand you this book when you're 14, right when your mind is still forming, and you're told that every word in there is the absolute truth. All of that combined created this perfect storm in my head, convincing me that these natural feelings were wrong and that closeness itself was something shameful. On top of that, I had some hardware issues to go along with the software ones. What I mean is, I'd struggled with anxiety and physical signs of stress since I was a kid. I've never been good with pressure. Whenever things get intense, I hit my limit almost immediately. My threshold is just very low. When you pack all that together, it creates this perfect storm that completely shuts down your natural energy. Picture this. I'm 18 years old. I remember it like it was yesterday. A beautiful fall morning. Now, if you're a guy or you know how biology works at 18, you know that every single morning involves a certain natural physical response. You're operating at full capacity every single day. But that morning, I woke up and nothing, not even close. It wasn't just off, it was completely non-responsive. And it didn't come back throughout the day either. It just vanished. Naturally, I was already a pretty reserved, introverted guy, but this made me withdraw into my shell even more. I had no idea what to do. I tried talking to my parents. My mom was just confused, like, wait, that can actually happen? Eventually, I asked for some money to see a private specialist. Back then, private healthcare wasn't as established as it is now. As it turned out, this doctor mostly specialized in treating specific infectious issues. I'm not great at reading people's expressions, but even I could tell. The look on his face said he was just as puzzled as I was. It was a bizarre situation. Here's an 18-year-old kid who hadn't even started that part of his life yet, dealing with this total physical shutdown. He clearly didn't know how to handle it. He ended up putting me on a heavy 2-month course of medication and ordered a bunch of random tests. After the third visit, it hit me. He couldn't help me because he was just guessing. He was completely out of his depth. After that, I went to a specialist at a public health clinic. They ran all the routine checks, the standard panels, and I was running a bit late to pick up the results. When I finally walked into the office, it was a typical setup. The nurse was sitting to the right, and the doctor was on the left. The doctor just looks at me and says, "You're perfectly healthy. Go on, get back out there and live your life," I told him. "How can I be healthy if I can't even function normally?" He just shrugged it off and said, "Look, you just need to stay active. Just maintain a regular lifestyle and keep at it. Everything will be fine." I told him, "How am I supposed to stay active if my body isn't responding? What am I supposed to do? Just wing it?" I was already incredibly shy to begin with. After that first specialist, I had closed off even more. And now I'm expected to explain my situation while a nurse is sitting right there. When you're 18, that's the last thing you want to deal with. After all that, my faith in the medical system was pretty much gone. I started digging for answers online, but the internet was nothing like it is today. Most of the specialized health resources were buried in health portals, or paywalled sites. They were hard to access. It didn't take long for me to realize that in our healthcare system, any kind of proper care or specialized help was going to cost an absolute fortune. I can't speak for every guy out there, but usually when a man feels like he's struggling with his confidence, he tries to overcompensate by focusing entirely on his career. I developed this obsessive drive to build wealth. Back then, if you searched for ways to build a digital business, you'd get hit with all these unreliable opportunities and shortcuts that promised too much. After spending a few years grinding to build up my savings, a major economic shift hit. I had put everything into this one venture, and overnight, it just collapsed. So I was already reaching my absolute limit, but this sent me into a very difficult season. A lot of people think this kind of struggle is just having a bad day or feeling down, like some moody fall vibe with a blanket and a latte. But for me, it was nothing like that. This heavy cloud meant I just couldn't move. Everything shut down. It was this catastrophic level of exhaustion where you're just frozen, unable to do the simplest things. Waking up was the hardest part. Every morning I'd open my eyes and think, here we go again. In sleep, you're at peace. The world doesn't exist. But waking up meant another day of feeling completely empty. I'd lie there, feeling physically exhausted and overwhelmed, to the point where I couldn't even get out of bed. I even had moments where I didn't want to keep going. But honestly, even that felt like too much energy I didn't have. Just when I thought I'd hit rock bottom, life showed me there was a basement. I prayed. Why me? And that's when I developed severe chronic health issues, specifically internal digestive struggles, IBS. For me, it became a daily physical nightmare. That made every hour a challenge. You basically start living next to the bathroom. You can't step more than 10 or 20 minutes away from safety without risking a disaster. I was dealing with urgent physical episodes multiple times a day, every single day. There's no real cure for it. You just take temporary fixes. But after a year, my internal systems were under immense strain. It felt like my body was at its absolute limit, as if I had been a heavy drinker for years. Ironically, life took on a whole new meaning. I became an expert at finding unconventional solutions, managing in the most difficult environments, whether it was in the woods or hidden spots in the snow. Back then, it was a constant survival game. I'm telling you, there is no one more focused or driven than a person in a physical emergency, sprinting toward a bathroom. That guy isn't stopping to think. Maybe I'm not good enough. Failure is not an option when you're on that mission. After a few years of living like that, I finally got into a relationship. It pushed me to actually try and fix my situation. I went to the most famous specialist in my state. He put me through every test and treatment imaginable. Mechanical aids, various prescriptions, specialized ultrasounds, you name it. I'll never forget when I finally opened up and told him everything. He looked at me and said, "In my 40 years of practice, I've only seen 2 cases like yours." At first, I was actually encouraged. I figured 2 cases meant clinical experience. So I asked him, "What happened to those 2 guys? How are they doing now?" He completely dodged the question. Regarding the prescriptions, the experience was quite difficult. Even small attempts led to severe side effects. Specifically, intense headaches that lasted for many hours. Standard relief didn't seem to help. The physical toll was immense. When comparing the limited progress to the physical suffering, it became clear this was not a sustainable path. I went to an endocrinologist. I explained that the standard blue pill was giving me these brutal side effects. He literally laughed it off. "Thanks for the help, Doc, but that wasn't what I was looking for." Once I quit therapy, I started digging into other systems. But then I faced new challenges. I pivoted into IT, but developed severe eye strain. Then came 2020. I lost my sense of smell and taste completely. To even breathe properly, I have to use nasal drops constantly. Then my legs gave way. Surgery, crutches, the works. Looking back, I realized physical performance isn't actually the biggest problem. You don't use that part of your body nearly as often as your eyes, your nose, or your legs. Through this, I found 5 ways to address the issue. Method 0 is the voodoo phase. Herbal extracts, or trying to, fix it by changing partners. Method 1 is the standard prescription route. Method 2 involves newer compounds. Back in the day, guys were sourcing these through private groups. Method 3 is vascular adjustment. Usually, it's all about internal blood flow. When things aren't working, the plumbing is leaking. A surgeon goes in to restrict the outflow, so the pressure stays where it belongs. The catch? It's hard to switch off afterward. Method 4 is the big one. Internal supports. Now, they use specialized prosthetics. It's a metallic structure. They surgically place. When you need it, you just manually adjust the position. And you're ready. There are different versions of the permanent solution. Some basic, some highly advanced. The advanced set involves an internal system with a control mechanism placed discreetly. You manually activate the system, and it provides the physical support needed. At the time, it cost around $150,000. Serious, life-changing money. Of course, I had relationships, but they rarely lasted more than a few months. When you're with someone who is emotionally invested, but you feel a total disconnect, it's incredibly isolating. People talk about the rush or the wave of happiness, but for me, it was the opposite. I felt drained, like another reminder that my internal wiring wasn't syncing up. I tried everything to reignite that spark. I looked into every possible corner of media and psychology to find a trigger. Nothing. I even saw a specialist who suggested drastic lifestyle changes, but I'm just not wired that way. Even the visuals don't work for me. I watch them like a critic, analyzing the camera angles, and after a few uncomfortable physical exams, I realized that whole medical path was a no-go. Then there's the reaction from friends. They don't believe you at first. When they finally do, they try to be supportive, saying, "Trust me, with the right person, your engine will start right up." They just don't get that for me. The system doesn't work that way. It's just like my situation. Then when that genius plan of theirs fails, they try to send you to their doctor, the one who's supposedly 100% guaranteed to fix you, even though he's just another specialist, like all the rest. When they've exhausted all their advice, especially during that prime window between 20 and 30, when intimacy is everything, and they realize their close friend is dealing with something this heavy, they're just floored. They look at me like, "Man, if that were me at your age, I don't know how I'd cope. I'd probably just feel completely defeated." And I just look at them and say, "Don't worry about it." Honestly, in my experience, the first 10 years are the hardest. After that, you just get used to it. For a man to have children naturally, everything has to work in sync. The natural drive, the physical response, the whole process. In my case, neither is happening. I used to have occasional physical indicators, and I actually went in for specialized testing. The doctor spent a long time analyzing the results, but he couldn't find a single thing. It turns out, in my system, the internal process is reversed. Everything moves inward instead of out. The thought of never having kids doesn't really weigh on me anymore. It's like everything is just going according to this plan I'm in. I haven't quite figured out the why behind that plan yet, but I've stopped fighting it. Why did I decide to come on this show? I just felt like my story might actually resonate with someone. It's a topic that usually doesn't get much airtime in the media. At first, I considered doing this without a mask, but then I asked myself, what's the real payoff for showing my face? I've heard that some people have this fixer mentality, that I can change him vibe. There are those who think they can influence someone's core identity or miraculously resolve a condition like mine. I didn't want to deal with that kind of attention. It's better this way. Even if I had dozens of people reaching out to me, what would I even do with that? What's the point of closeness if there's no natural reward at the end? It's human nature. When people have something, they take it for granted. I know I was lucky to be born into a relatively stable family, but look at me now. I've lost my sense of taste and smell, so I've completely given up certain habits, like drinking. There's just no reward in it anymore. Think about that for a second. No indulgences. You can't smell or taste your favorite food. And you can't have that physical connection. Most people would call that a nightmare. But honestly, I still feel like my life is great. I found a way to be okay with it all. It's a paradox, right? Finding joy just in the fact that you're alive and that you can walk. Because there are so many people out there who can't. Just knowing that in some small way, you still have an impact on the world. Even something as simple as choosing between a small or a large bag at the grocery store. That's a choice that belongs to you. There are people in this world who are completely stationary, who have no agency at all. It's a mistake to measure your worth solely by social success or by comparing your life to others. The only real way to see progress is to compare who you are today to who you were yesterday. If there's a takeaway from my story, it's this. To all the women watching, please understand that a man's health is far more fragile than it looks. On the outside, it might seem rock solid, but on the inside, it's delicate. Be mindful of the men in your lives. Be a little more patient and a little more compassionate when they're facing their own private struggles. They say a woman's power is in her life, but a man's life is in his power. So to all the men out there, the next time you're with the woman you love, hold her a little closer and live that moment. For me too. Because in the grand design of things, if a light goes out in one house, it has to burn twice as bright in another. That's the only way the world stays in balance, right?